This is our audience.
Hi, my name is Judy Lange, and I'm going to be talking to you about Michael Brown today. How many of you feel safe in the environment you live in? Well, many people now do not feel very safe where they live, maybe because of their race, their gender, their social background, their religion, or even their cultural background. Well, I'm very well prepared to tell you about the current shootings that have been going on in the northern United States, in particular, Ferguson, Missouri. I would like to inform everyone today of the murder of Michael Brown that occurred on August 9, 2014. This is a picture of Michael Brown. I would like to speak today on who killed Michael Brown and for what reason, the effects of his shooting, and also how closely it is related to the civil rights movements that occurred in the mid to late 1900s. You may be asking yourself who killed Michael Brown and for what purpose? Well, on August 9, 2014, Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer named Darren Wilson. Brown was an 18-year-old African-American who was unarmed and gunned down by a white police officer named Darren Wilson. As stated in the article on CNN.com by Rachel Clark, some witnesses say teenager assaulted the officer first at the outset and tried to grab his gun, but other witnesses say Wilson was the aggressor. I'm here to tell you all that although Michael Brown was unarmed, he was still at risk of being killed by attempting to assault a police officer. However, police were not called to the scene for no particular reason at all. As stated by Christopher Lett on CNN.com, surveillance video captures a man pushing a clerk walking out the store with a box of cigarillos. Michael Brown and his friend were in a corner store called Ferguson Market and Liquor when suddenly one of the teenagers was caught on camera attempting to attack the store clerk. It was eventually found and proved that Brown was the teenager that attacked the store clerk and tried to steal a pack of cigarillos. This being said, a 911 call was made to an officer named Darren Wilson who arrived at the scene to confront the two boys. So how could one simple murder spark so many effects? Was this really one simple murder, or was it bigger than that? The murder has brought out so many riots in Ferguson since Brown was shot. This being said, riots are the major issue of Michael Brown having been killed, occurring in Ferguson since the date of his murder. A reporter named Jules Samad posted in his article, Ferguson riots, violence erupts after Michael Brown police shooting verdict. Protesters returned to the riot-scarred streets of Ferguson a day after crowds looted businesses and set fire to buildings in a night of rage against the grand jury's decision not to indict the white police officer who killed Michael Brown, an unarmed black 18-year-old, in a case that has inflamed racial tensions in the United States. The massive riots that have been taking place have the biggest drives of racial disparity behind them. They have brought out many racial issues that Brown's family sees and also that other people see in the town, and they also believe to be true. It is stated by Teresa Welch in her article on usnews.com called Views You Can Use. Unsurprisingly, a new poll finds that race itself impacts reactions as to whether or not Brown's death raises important issues about race or whether the issue of race is getting more attention than it deserves. Pew found that about 4 to 1 African Americans say the shooting in Ferguson raises important issues about race in the American discussion. By contrast, whites, by 47% to 37%, say the issue of race is getting more attention than it deserves. Now certainly this is not the first instance of civil rights movements that we have all heard of, so let's take a moment to go back in history. What does the word civil rights mean to you? Well, to the protesters in Ferguson, it can very easily mean the same thing as it did in Birmingham, Alabama, when civil rights were a major issue. Protests in Ferguson are being caused by the same issues as protests in Birmingham. The biggest cause of these protests and the biggest drive behind them is racial equality. As stated by writer Madison Underwood in her article, A Message from Birmingham to Ferguson, Keep Protests Nonviolent. As protests wrapped the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, following the fatal shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a police officer on Saturday, many have drawn comparisons to the bloody fight against segregation in Birmingham half a century ago. This particular shooting involved a young African-American teenager who was killed by an officer who was caught Caucasian. Conclusions are being drawn that Brown was killed because he was black. There were the same issues in Birmingham in 1963 when Martin Luther King Jr. walked the streets as a proud African-American civil rights leader. Barnett Wright wrote in his article, "Civil rights icon MLK once famously said, 'Nonviolence is a powerful weapon which cuts out wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. It is a sword that heals.' That appears to be a lesson on some demonstrators in Ferguson in the aftermath of a grand jurisdiction to not indict a white police officer in the shooting death of an unarmed black teenager. Now, what is the point of this all? It is very important to be aware of your surrounding situations. Now that you have learned who killed Michael Brown and what his reasoning was, his name was Darren Wilson. He killed him because he assaulted a store clerk and stole. You have also learned the effects of Brown's murder, which was major riots in Ferguson. And you have also learned how this case is similar to the civil rights movement